I accidentally glanced at my fiancée Sophia's cell phone, saw that her boyhood friend Ethan had just sent a message. Oops, the little umbrella is broken. It's such a simple sentence, but it instantly made me feel cold all over. I was in a car accident last night. She said she was at her best friend's house for a party. I kept calling her, but there was no answer. I endured the severe pain, called an ambulance to the hospital by myself. Later I realized she didn't answer her phone all night. It's because she's with her best friend Ethan. Tomorrow, Sophia and I are getting married. Her best friend Ethan had to come to her bachelorette party with a group of old classmates. As soon as the door opened, I saw Sophia and Ethan sitting face to face, playing past the tissue. The tissue paper was so thin it was almost transparent. When Ethan bit down on one end, his lips touched Sophia's directly. Sophia didn't avoid it. The moment the tissue fell, her lips were still on his lips for a second. Her intimate behavior now, it's nothing like the coldness she's shown me the last few days. Her old classmates started whistling up a storm. It's like they've seen this kind of scene a lot. It's so skillful that it's cold. Those ear-piercing noises stuck into my chest like knives. I could hardly breathe. James, someone suddenly shouted. The voice changed the atmosphere in the room for a moment. I did. Not only did it separate the intimate pair, it also made all the eyes in the room fall on me. Oops! Ethan screamed quite exaggeratedly. He walked quickly to me, a smug grin on his face. It was just a game session. Everyone has played it before. You don't think too much about it. I looked at him in surprise. Just now I went to take a call on my way back. I suddenly received a friend request. The note was Ethan. After passing it, he sent me a voice message. Bro, Sophia's best friend for so many years is me. Who do you think she cares more about in her heart? Then he sent another message. I wish you guys a happy wedding. He's explaining himself now with aplomb, as if he wasn't the one who sent the provocative message. Instead, I'm too sensitive and paranoid. You don't have to say it. I directly interrupted his unfinished words. Ethan's face immediately became ugly. A fierce light appeared in his eyes. Sophia hurriedly came over. She stood between the two of us. My right leg suddenly hurt terribly. The whole person slammed into the corner of the table, fell directly on the floor. Quiet room. The muffled sound was especially obvious. Sophia reacted only then, rushed over to help me up. I found this too ironic. Stiffly braced myself to stand up, dodging her hand. I take a deep breath, look straight at her and ask, Sophia, if I say so. He just messaged me to provoke me. Said James, you've got to stop, it's just a game. Sophia interrupted me. Her tone was still cold. The impatience in her eyes wasn't hidden at all. I froze in place. The pain in my right leg spread throughout my body. It slowly numbed all the nerves. At this time, I truly realized that belated pain and shame. It was too much to bear. I picked up my cell phone, dragged my legs to the balcony. The night wind blew on my face, cold to the bone, but it can't suppress the fire in my heart. I stood on the balcony blowing the wind, trying to calm myself down. At this time, the screen of the cell phone next to me lit up. It showed Ethan's name. Took a closer look. Found Sophia's cell phone forgotten on the balcony lounger. I couldn't help but click on her chat with Ethan. Ethan sent a message. Oops. The little umbrella broke. The words sent chills down my spine. I never thought that when I was hospitalized in a car accident, they actually got together behind my back. The pale moonlight shines on the phone screen. My eyes gradually couldn't see anymore. Memories of the past kept surfacing. I had a car accident last night. My right leg is injured and I can't walk. Sophia told me she was at a friend's house for a party, but I called many times but couldn't find her. I endured the pain. I called an ambulance to the hospital. Now I realize. The night she disappeared, she was with him. It was like a stab in the chest, but I couldn't help but read on. From the chat log, I saw a saddening conversation. A week ago, Ethan sent a message. The dress you're wearing tonight is especially nice. It feels like I'm back in high school. She said, you've always had a good eye. I remember since then. She's been wearing this dress ever since. My mind went blank. I didn't even realize someone was approaching behind me, until the cell phone was suddenly taken away. Sophia frowned at me. The tone of her voice carried unhappiness. You're looking at my cell phone, looking at her familiar yet unfamiliar eyes. I could no longer keep my cool. You have anything to say? You said the kiss just now was just a game. Then what are these chat records? Why are you having an affair with him? Where did you go last night? I pointed at her cell phone. My voice was shaking with anger. Even if things are clear, I still wanted her to say something. But she just quietly turned off the screen, standing there. No expression on her face whatsoever. She was the same as before. Doesn't say anything. Sophia and I were just friends. But that trip changed everything. We went hiking together that day. She wasn't feeling well, but she insisted on climbing to the top. Seeing her work so hard, I felt heartbroken at the same time, and I especially admired her. She suddenly fainted at the top of the mountain. I immediately picked her up and carried her down the hill. I took her to the hospital overnight. I stayed in the hospital room all night, looking at her pale face. It was especially hard on my heart. Why do you have to be so strong? I whispered. She smiled weakly. I just don't want everyone to delay the trip because of me. At that moment, I couldn't hold back my inner emotions any longer. From now on, tell me where you are not feeling well. I'll always be by your side. From then on, we've been together in these 3 years. Sophia and I got along very sweetly. We've gone through all the things we should have gone through. A month ago, I asked her to marry me. She said yes right away, but I didn't expect her male best friend Ethan to suddenly show up. At first I was a bit worried. To reassure me, every time Ethan contacted her or came to see her at work, Sophia would take the initiative to tell me. She had shown me with her actions. She and Ethan are just ordinary friends, but now, seeing them kissing, hearing their ambiguous conversations, I realized that Sophia and Ethan's relationship wasn't simple. I clenched my fists, hold back my anger to question her. Sophia said coldly, "You're such a controlling person. I've had enough of it." She spoke in a calm tone. Tell me her feelings for me are gone. That was the moment. I felt like the sky had fallen. I don't know how much time passed. My brother sent a voice message. Said he already knew the whole thing, although it was only through a cell phone call. But I could hear that his tone was full of remorse. I finally understand. That mountain climbing trip. My brother and his sister should have gone together. His sister went abroad to study in high school. She's been living abroad. Just came back not long ago. I haven't seen her yet. They had something to do. They called up Sophia, who was still a friend at the time. That was the beginning of my acquaintance with Sophia. I think that's why my brother felt guilty. He sent another message, "Don't move. We'll pick you up at the hotel." I stood on the balcony. The wound on my leg hurt a little, but I didn't care about that. I turned around. I saw Ethan standing behind Sophia at some point. He looked at me silently, sympathy in his eyes. What made me most uncomfortable was, there was also a hint of mockery and disdain, if any, in his gaze. This kind of eyes. I was too familiar with it. During this recent period of time, he always appeared in front of me without a second thought, looking at me with that kind of seemingly unnoticeable but straight eyes. At that time, I couldn't understand. Sophia obviously has no feelings for him. How can he still be so confident to keep pestering her? Last month, Sophia and I went to her friend's party. While eating, a few good friends joked, "We had thought you wouldn't get together." Sophia and Ethan were so close before. We all thought they were the perfect match. My hand was shaking badly as I held the wine glass. As my friends joked, I suddenly remembered the way Ethan looked at Sophia as soon as I entered the house. Sophia grabbed my hand, voice full of apologies. "They were just joking. Don't take it personally." "Okay," I asked softly. "You've known each other for so long. Haven't you ever had a heart attack?" She didn't say anything for half a day. Finally, she said slowly in my ear, "Hubby, now I only have you in my heart." The sincerity and helplessness in her words let me cannot bear to ask further. That night, we lay on the bed back to back. No one said anything, nor did we fall asleep cuddling like usual. Back to reality. I stared blankly at what was happening in front of me, the pain of betrayal, slowly growing from what I had just discovered, and spreading rapidly in details I hadn't noticed before. Sophia was my first love, and the only person in my life that I wanted to go to the end together. I just couldn't accept this kind of impure feelings. There was always someone else in her heart, when passing by Sophia. I forced myself to hold back the sourness inside. Trying to stay calm, I said to her, "Let's cancel the wedding. We'll each go home tonight and explain to our parents. Anyway, we haven't gotten a license yet. They should understand." I didn't wait for her to say anything. I turned around and left. When I left the hotel, it was already dark. The fall wind was a bit cool on my body. I took out my cell phone and looked at it. The heart was empty, didn't receive any message. Suddenly, someone tapped my shoulder from behind. I froze for a moment, thought it was a good friend coming. Emma turned her head once. I saw those bright eyes. I stopped in mid-sentence. "Emma," she smiled at me. She smiled at me and said, "Let's go. My brother is waiting in the car." I didn't know what to say. Emma is Michael's sister, but I don't get along with her much. At most, we meet and greet each other. Today, she came with Michael to pick me up. I was really surprised. I was just about to speak. Suddenly, I felt someone behind me looking at me. I turned around. Sophia is standing in front of the hotel. Her eyes are red, staring at our side. I didn't look much, turned my head and walked with Emma towards the parking place. As soon as we got in the car, Mom's call came. "What's going on with you? The wedding is all set. Now you're not going to get married. Stop it," Michael said. He started the car. I turned my head to look at Emma. She was quietly looking out the window. The moonlight reflected her beautiful face. On the phone, Mother paused for a moment. She seemed to be restraining her anger. She said, "Go home and talk." He hung up just after that. Michael drove on, asked worriedly, "Is Auntie okay?" I paused for a moment, squeezed out a small smile and said, "Got used to it a long time ago, although my parents are not divorced, but have been living apart for many years. They both have new relationships outside, but because of the face problem has not been picked out." On the way, Michael told me they were having dinner at a nearby restaurant. They came as soon as they heard the news. Then he continued as if nothing had happened. "It was my sister who insisted on coming. When we got home, it was still early. Mom was sitting on the sofa with a stern face. Dad was smoking across from her. When I entered the door, Mother sneered and said to Father, 'Just to play a game to withdraw from the marriage. I'm sure it's your son.' Father ignored her. He stubbed out his cigarette and asked me, 'Think about it.' I nodded decisively. 'Yes, I'll take care of the consequences.' 'I can't.' My mother was furious. Suddenly stood up. Pointing at me, she cursed loudly. 'The invitations have all been sent out. You are now saying that you want to withdraw from the marriage. Aren't you deliberately making me lose face? I should have known better. I shouldn't have given birth to you in the first place, although I had expected it. But when I heard those words, it still hurts like a knife in my heart. Mom, it's not just about the game. I found Sophia's chat records with that guy in her cell phone.' I looked at Mom, slowly said, 'The night before last, they were together.' Mother froze for a moment, surprise in her eyes, but immediately and firmly retorted, 'It won't happen. Zio Lin is so filial. She bought me a whole set of gold jewelry. How could she possibly do such a thing?' I looked at my mom with wide eyes. My heart was on fire. Mom also seemed to realize that she had said the wrong thing. Her mouth moved to explain, but in the end she didn't say anything. 'That's enough.' My dad suddenly raised his voice. He looked a bit impatient. 'The child has already made up his mind. You still have the nerve to say that.' My mom looked like she had found an object to vent on, said with a sneer, 'Why don't you get a divorce when you cheated on your wife? Now you persuade others to break up. The former third party has come to the door. You still insist on not divorcing. Now see others have trouble. Why are you so positive? She looks like she doesn't care.' My dad looked like he'd been right about something. He was so angry that his eyes turned red. He didn't deny it. 'Who are you to talk about me? You're not still tangled up with that guy.' They are still blaming each other. They didn't notice that I was already back in the room. I've lived in this room since I was a kid, although it's a bit old. But everything is still the same. Only the sound of my breathing could be heard in the quiet room. Suddenly, my cell phone rang. It was a message from Ethan. 'A couple of us are having a drink. Are you coming or not?' Then, he sent another picture they took at the bar. On the photo, Ethan and Sophia are holding glasses, are having a cross-cup drink. The two people's faces were close together. The light was dim, but the smiles on their faces were especially conspicuous. The sound of the surrounding students coaxing seems to have become the background sound. I thought I would be angry, but strangely enough, instead, I was unusually calm at this moment. I silently blacked out Ethan. Then I called the guests one by one. I told them the wedding was canceled after the last call. Sophia called out of the blue. It was a bit noisy on the other end. Sophia was silent for a while. Her voice was slightly shaky. She said, "You are serious?" I didn't bother to say much to her. Casually responded with a hem, and hung up the phone. Just wanted to turn off the phone. Emma sent me a message. "I brought medicine for my leg. Rub it on and it'll heal fast." I stayed for a while. After the car accident, my leg was injured. I limped when I walked. Sophia didn't notice. My parents didn't notice either. As it turned out, she noticed. I stared out at my injured leg, thinking about Emma's offer to bring me medicine. A warm feeling welled up in my heart, just thinking. There's a knock on the door. It's Sophia. My mom is standing behind Sophia. She turned her head and didn't dare to look me in the eye. She said, "I still don't believe Zia Lin would do anything to wrong you. Now she's here. Let's have a good talk." The door quickly closed. Sophia and I were left in the room. She looked at my injured leg. She looked at my injured leg and was a bit uncomfortable talking. "Is your leg better?" He gently put his hand on the back of my cold hand. He whispered, "I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention just now." The warmth of his palm made me freeze for a moment. I instinctively drew my hand back with force. "Said you go out. Maybe I was acting too cold." Sophia froze for a moment, but immediately regained her composure. She said, "James, marriage is a big deal. You don't even give me a chance to explain." "Explain?" I looked at her. I couldn't help but laugh. "Sophia, what do you want to explain to me? Tell me. Why you didn't duck when Ethan kissed you, and why you didn't answer my calls the night before last. Why didn't you answer my calls the night before last? Why didn't you answer my calls the night before last, James? I was with him when I most wanted to hear you explain. You didn't say anything." I interrupted her. "It's too late to apologize and explain. There's no use." Sophia visibly froze. James, believe it or not, he and I are not what you think we are." I looked at her in silence, said, "That night my best friend fell out of love. She dragged me to talk all night, so I didn't get your call. I didn't go to him. As for that dress, I only wore it because I thought it looked good." She paused, then said, "I saw the WeChat messages, but it only showed that he withdrew one." I froze. "Ethan did do something similar before. All this time leaving you alone to prepare for the wedding. It's my fault. I'm a little scared of getting married. So I've been hiding, but it's not that I don't love you." She looked at me, with a hint of regret in her eyes. "Those people made a mess." My mind got even more confused. Somehow, I forgot to push him away, but these explanations of hers, I only feel pale and powerless when I hear them. "James, there's really nothing between me and him." Sophia gently put her hand on the back of mine. After 2 seconds, I pulled my hand back silently. "Sophia, you think it's not betrayal if you don't have sex? The ambiguity and intimacy between you." Every move stung me. I clenched my fists. I took a deep breath. "The way you looked at him, obviously hiding a love that can't be hidden." Sophia froze. She probably forgot how gentle and considerate she is whenever she's with that male best friend, but told me I was too controlling, always suspicious. She wanted to continue. I interrupted coldly. "Since you're not leaving, I'll go." Finish speaking. I pushed open the door and went out. Sophia shouted behind me in panic, "Wait!" As soon as I pushed open the door, I found Emma sitting in the living room. She was talking and laughing with my parents. "It feels like she's already part of our family." Emma heard me move, whispered, "I heard you hurt your leg. I specially brought a very effective ointment for you." I didn't react for a moment, just wanted to say thank you. Then I realized that someone was staring at me wistfully. Ethan was already standing in the living room. How did he find this place? Ethan approached slowly. He has an uncomfortable smile on his face. "You guys made up." I sneered, retorted, "It was just the two of us who stayed for so long. You'd think something would have happened." Ethan blushed. Eyes immediately clouded over. Originally, he wanted to counter his repeated provocations. But seeing his face getting worse and worse, feeling uninspired, Sophia came out and asked, "You guys haven't left yet?" This was obviously talking about Ethan and Emma. Emma didn't say anything. Ethan, on the other hand, couldn't help himself. He asked me to help his parents to clarify the matter. Now the relationship is good. You've turned your back on them. Sophia didn't say anything. She seems to have acquiesced. I saw how cold she was to Ethan. I don't understand why she's doing this. Ethan couldn't hold out any longer. Sophia, you really have no feelings for me at all. He froze. His voice was full of pain. We were so close. Is it all an act? Sophia didn't say anything, just silently took my hand. Ethan suddenly smiled. His expression was a bit strange. He took out a photo from his bag. He handed it to me. On the photo was a bed. 2 people are on it. The posture is very intimate. They were photographed clearly. That night, I admit nothing happened. Ethan stared at me. His eyes grew cold. But a month ago, the day you had your fight, she came to me for a drink. I was confused. Dumbfounded, I looked at Sophia. She stared straight at the photo. Her face turned white at that moment. I felt as if my throat was being pinched. I couldn't catch my breath. Her expression said it all. James, Sophia's eyes were red. Seeing the way she tried to explain but couldn't say anything, I clearly felt something collapse inside me. In the end, all I felt was nausea. Since you guys like each other, why did you drag me into your game? I was drunk that day and she was still explaining. I coldly interrupted her. Don't talk about alcohol. You don't even have the guts to admit the truth. It will only make me despise you more. Sophia's face turned white. She stood motionless. The misfortune of my family made me want an innocent love, but the more I want, the harder it is to get. After a while, Sophia only whispered, I'm sorry. The dimly lit room. She turns and walks slowly toward the door. Once Sophia is gone, Ethan looks at me, a triumphant light in his eyes. Now you should know. You will always be a loser in front of me. I stared at him coldly. A question popped up in my mind. With an IQ like that, can he really go to college? I hadn't said anything yet. A cold voice suddenly came from behind. Stealing this kind of photo while others are not paying attention. You're so revolting. Ethan frowned. What do you mean by that? Emma responded slowly. What I mean is, such despicable tactics. Only someone like you would do it. I froze for a moment. Couldn't help but laugh. Ethan also came back to his senses. You called me scum. Emma shook her head gently. I didn't call you a scumbag. You're just like that. I was telling the truth. Ethan walks away in a rage. He curses as he walks, like a weasel being bullied by a big dog. He was so angry. I looked at him like that. I couldn't help but laugh. Laughed so hard that I couldn't straighten up. I came back to my senses. Noticed Emma's eyes stayed on me. She was wearing a light blue dress. The hem of the dress was light and flowing, making her look even more beautiful. When our gazes met, Emma said softly, I put the medicine on the table. Remember to apply it on time. I walked her out the door, watching her walk away, relieved. I just went inside. Michael called to ask. They were really asleep. I froze for a moment, told what just happened in detail, ended with a special compliment to Emma for her witty comeback. Michael, however, felt something was wrong. Did my sister go to your place? Didn't she say she went out for a walk with her girlfriends? I don't want to live at home, seeing my parents fight. And I don't want to go back to the house I rented with Sophia. I'm moving in with Michael for now. I'll move out when I find a suitable house. Sophia's stuff. I'll pack them up in a few days. Emma is traveling abroad. She'll probably be back in a week or two. That's one of the reasons I accepted Michael's invitation. Mom and Dad have been calling a lot lately. I haven't answered any of them. Sophia hasn't contacted me either. I heard that Ethan is always running to Sophia's house, trying to please her parents, but every time Sophia kicked him out, she said she wouldn't see him. But now, these things have nothing to do with me anymore. On this day, to celebrate my finding a new house, Michael suggested going swimming when we got to the pool because it had just opened. There were very few people. Perfect for practicing. Michael looks sunny and cheerful. In fact, he is afraid of water. He trembles when he comes to the pool. I'd better stay here and watch you. You swim first. I have to cheer myself up first. I smiled and jumped into the water, although I can swim, but also only know breaststroke. I swam for about 20 minutes. Without noticing, I reached the deep water, started to feel a little tired. I wanted to swim back, but I realized I didn't have much strength left. Beware! A cool female voice came from my ear. Her slender arms wrapped around my waist from behind. I looked up, right into her eyes that were as black as ink. The whole person froze at once. I didn't expect it to be Emma. She was wearing a black one-piece swimsuit. Her figure was also very good. I saw my brother send a message saying he was swimming here. I also want to come here to relax. Emma took me to the shallow water. She said, "You're a good swimmer, just need to practice your endurance." I nodded my head. Looking at the glistening water, I said, "It's time to practice more." Michael shouted from the shore with a smile, "Sister, you're just in time. Teach him." Emma has a smile in her eyes. "Do you want to learn freestyle?" I said yes. "I'd like to learn something new. I want to learn something new." The swim showed me a different side of Emma. She was graceful, patiently teaching me breathing and stroke techniques. When she held me from behind, the warmth of her breath swept gently over my ears. My heartbeat unconsciously speeds up. After a long time of practicing, I was finally able to swim well. We floated on the water together, enjoying this rare quiet time. After swimming, we walked slowly along the side path. The breeze blew by. A faint scent of flowers drifted in. Emma suddenly stopped walking. "Actually, the first time we met, it was in this swimming pool. 3 years ago. A few guys were bullying a girl. You were the only one who stood up at that time, even though he was beaten up later. My brother always said his brother was especially manly. I finally saw it with my own eyes that day." I rubbed my nose a little awkwardly. That memory slowly became clearer. Emma paused for a moment. Her tone suddenly became gentle. "But your parents thought you were fighting. Without asking you about your injuries, they scolded you. Then they left you alone and left." Emma looked at me, sighed and said, "I thought you would explain, but you were especially calm, as if you were used to it. That afternoon, you swam alone in the pool all the time, until you were exhausted. Finally, you almost drowned because of cramps. The lifeguard pulled you ashore, but you just numbly wiped your face. You gave a sneer. I understood at that moment. It wasn't that you weren't angry. It's not that you don't want to vent. It's just that you hide all your emotions in your heart. Paralyze yourself with pain. Punish yourself." Emma looked at me, whispered. It was the first time I'd ever felt such heartache for a boy I didn't know. I froze for a while. Only then did I say slowly, "Then my parents realized that they had misunderstood me. Someone told them the truth. In order to make up for it, they bought me the latest game console. Since then, I've never been to the swimming pool." A thought just crossed my mind. The words hadn't even left my mouth. Emma spoke up. "I'm the one who told your parents the truth." My heart skipped a beat. Emma's eyes were gentle. She whispered, "After we passed each other that time, when we met again, you were already with Sophia. I haven't fully recovered from my leg injury. I still limp when I walk." Emma naturally held my arm. She reminded me gently, "Walk slower." I was too busy looking at her, didn't pay attention to the road, just wanted to speak. A familiar voice suddenly came from behind me. "James." Sophia is standing under the streetlight. The dim light made her look especially haggard. Her face couldn't be seen clearly. I took a closer look, found that she had lost a lot of weight. Her makeup is not as delicate as before. I said coldly, "Shouldn't you be with your new acquaintance? What are you doing here?" Sophia didn't seem to hear the sarcasm in my words. She looked back and forth between Emma and me, tentatively asking, "You two are on good terms now?" "You make me laugh with this kind of questioning." Sophia said, "We've already broken up. Don't talk about this anymore." Sophia froze for a moment. Her expression was a bit embarrassed. Said, "I'm sorry. I didn't have the heart to talk to her." Turned around and prepared to leave. "I was drunk that night. Nothing happened." Sophia's words stopped me in my tracks. I turned around and asked, "What did you say?" Sophia pursed her lips. "Ethan took those pictures. I was drunk and asleep that night. He took them when I wasn't looking and sent them to you." I froze for a second. Unconsciously, I looked at Emma. It happened to meet her gaze. We looked at each other. We were both thinking the same thing. This woman should really see a psychiatrist. I drank too much that night. In fact, nothing happened. I woke up the next day. Ethan and I were just lying in bed together. We really didn't. Emma interrupted her. Her tone was soft but sarcastic. "It's not a betrayal if you're in the same bed. It's like a hunter taking aim at his prey. Not shooting means it's harmless." Sophia's face turns paler. Emma continued, "It's just a metaphor." After a long silence, Sophia turned her gaze to me. "Called out, James." She whispered my name. "No matter how I explained, no matter how I tried to fix it, you won't look back, right?" I answered without hesitation. "Yes." Sophia froze, muttering, "But we didn't do anything. He's still gone. It's all over. You were on the verge of forgiving me before." I paused. "You still have that broken necklace in your drawer." Sophia froze. Then she nodded. "You said it was from your cousin. It was actually from Ethan, wasn't it?" I asked calmly. "Want to know how I found out?" Sophia's lips were trembling. She couldn't speak. "On the day of the party, Ethan sent me a picture of you guys together. I recognized the couple's necklaces." Sophia froze. I smiled calmly. "It wasn't Ethan who hurt me. It was you who always allowed him to hurt me." Looking at Sophia's tear-filled face, I whispered, "From now on, we're done." After that day, Sophia completely disappeared from my life, moved home. Michael loves to come to my place all the time. He said he'd gotten used to playing games with me. Every night, Emma passes by my house, saying she's stopping by to see Michael. She said that she wanted to see Michael on the way. As we chatted, the topic of conversation would unknowingly turn to me. The topic of conversation would always turn to me without her realizing it. Gradually, I realized that every night was like a date with Emma. On weekends, the three of us used to go to basketball games together, but Michael always found a reason to leave in the middle of the game. In the end, I was the only one left to teach Emma how to shoot hoops. I knew in my heart, Michael was trying to give us a chance to be alone. I like Emma more and more, but I don't dare to confess my love. Every time I want to take that step, I was always hesitant. Later, Michael couldn't stand it anymore. He quietly showed me Emma's memo. It's not really a memo. It's more like a diary of her thoughts. It's not a diary, but every sentence shows how much she misses me. Exactly. Since our reunion, she's been jotting down little thoughts about chasing me in her cell phone memos every day. And today, she's gonna have to look at him a little more, find a chance to have lunch with him, pretend to pass by his company. These simple words reveal a girl's pure heart. I froze. Emma pushed the door in. She found me looking at her cell phone screen. She immediately got nervous. She quickly came over, took the phone away, her ears are red, pretended to be calm and said, "How do you look at my cell phone?" I was originally torn in my heart, but seeing her embarrassed look, couldn't help but smile. It's like the fog dispersed. All the hesitation and worry disappeared. I've always wanted to find a simple love, wanted a place where I could feel at ease. Isn't this the person I'm looking for? I looked at the flustered girl in front of me, suddenly walked up and hugged her. "Don't think so much," I whispered. "I also like you. Let's be together." Emma was stunned in my arms for a moment. Then she hugged me tightly. She said in a choked voice, "I'll do it."